Well, for more on the trade situation between the United States and China, let's bring in Stephen Gu. He's director of the U.S. China Business Advisory Services for consulting firm PYA. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, there does seem to be more optimism coming out of these trade talks than we saw going into them. What's your reaction to the outcome of the trade negotiations so far?
I think there's, compared to the talk in Beijing last month, I think definitely there's more positive signs. And for example, both administration has sent out some positive signals, and China has dropped its 1 billion slogan anti-dumping investigation. And President Trump also softening its tone on the trade restriction on the ZTE. And I think China is taking it very seriously to avoid the trade war, and the China's openness and willingness to engage in this trade negotiation itself is a very positive sign. But at the same time, I think there are still some hurdles to be solved. Intellectual property and overcapacity of steels are some of the examples. We need to keep in mind that this trade talk are very comprehensive and very broad, and this is going to take time. And this is going to take some time to resolve. And this is just the beginning of the negotiation, and I think it will take a longer process. And I don't expect anything concrete or any final agreement can come out of this round.
Now, as we mentioned, U.S. officials claim that there's an offer from China to import more U.S. goods from the U.S. to the tune of about $200 billion. And as we know, China is denying that claim. They're saying that that's not true. But which sectors have the best chance of increasing their imports to China?
I think much of everything from airplane to oils, energy, and even agriculture products like soybeans, and of course high-tech products. And for example, the airplane itself, three biggest China airline company, China Airline, China Southern, and China Eastern, they will add 600 airplanes by 2020. So, for example, Boeing 777, the price is $425 million, if I remember correctly. So times 600, that itself counts $200 billion.
Now, all this comes as China's middle class continues to grow. We see personal income rising, and the government is lifting foreign investment restrictions across a range of industries. So what sort of opportunities does that open up for goods and services, not just from the U.S., but around the world?
Yeah, I think the raising of middle class and their disposable income represents tremendous opportunity for companies from the U.S. and actually from the rest of the world. I think there's a huge demand for goods and services related to people's health, wealth, and happiness. For sectors like health care and entertainment, leisure, traveling, and professional service firms like IT or legal, accounting, financial service, money management, all those sectors can benefit from this.
Now, what are some of the challenges or perhaps growing pains that come as China continues to open up its markets? What does that mean in terms of challenges for trade?
Well, I think of course, to open the trade will always bring there's always heads back from the open trade. Some sector can be hit, some sector can be growing. I think the high-tech sector, R&D sector will grow a lot, and the service industry will grow a lot.
Now, we also saw that China has promised to increase its imports, open up its markets, but at its own pace. And they also want the markets to play more of a role rather than the government. So when it comes to people saying they want China to open up faster, what's your take on whether they should be more patient given the pace that China's already going at?
Yeah, I definitely think it has to follow the market pace instead of use government force. And U.S. need to be a little patient on this. Use the airplane I mentioned before as an example. For example, if the airplane order today will not make an immediate dent on the trade deficit. And because the airplane order normally take years to get it delivered. And oil and liquefied gas is another good example. China already increased the import for oil and liquefied gas from U.S., but the U.S. have certain limits on how much it can ship overseas. And right now, U.S. only have 2 terminals can ship those commodity overseas, but as much of them already under a long-term contract to sellers, to buyers like Japan and India.
Right.
So of course, American can build more export terminals or infrastructures, but those are going to take years to build.
Now, Stephen, to that point, I do want to get to the fact that China is hosting its first international import exhibition later this year. So how should U.S. companies better position themselves to take better advantage of China's market?
Well, I think I would encourage American companies to go there, even if they are not exporting anything to China. I would encourage them at least to go there, take a look, so they can have a feeling of what's the demand there, and maybe they can find lots of opportunities. I recently just returned from a trip to Japan, and it's funny, there are so many Chinese tourists, and I went to some drugstore, duty-free drugstore. The drugstore is similar to the convenience store here in U.S. And the store manager said that 90% of their sales are sold to the tourists, and the majority of them are Chinese. So the demands of the other markets there, it's about how to grab those opportunities. So I encourage the U.S. company to go to that exhibit.
All right, thank you so much. Stephen Gu there from PYA's U.S. China Business Advisory Services.